Learning occurs in many ways: reading, writing, observing, and doing. Montgomery College's access to history is for the doers. Our guests have participated in actions or events that we now recognize as part of history. In the studio, they sit down, mic up, and have conversations with faculty and students from Montgomery College. There is no host, no flashy set, and no commercials, just people and their stories. Sometimes the stories date back many years, and sometimes the story is current. It's all historical, and it's part of Montgomery College's access to history.
My childhood was difficult. My family was very good to me, but we moved around a lot and it was always challenging to find happiness. My name is Grace Jo, and I defected from North Korea.
Hi, Grace. Thank you so much for coming here today and chatting with me. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm glad.
So you have such a fascinating story. It's so interesting to me in particular because I am half Korean and I have family in Korea on my mom's side. And you were born and grew up in North Korea. So tell me what you remember about being a child in North Korea.
Yes, I was born in 1991 in North Hamgyong province. That's right next to the border between North Korea and China. And there's only like a shallow river that divides North Korea and China. And my mother side, my grandmother and my mother, they lived in North province for her entire life. And my father, he grew up in North Korea since he was 11 years old as an orphan. So he studied a little bit and worked for the companies and factories since he was a teenage boy. Okay. And then my mother, she was a singer and she was a sports player. She was very active during her school year. And she met, well, actually my father's company and his mentors and all those boss, they found my mom. And then they arranged marriage for my mom and my dad. So it was a long time ago. She got married when she was 1980.
Okay.
1980. And then my mother and father had the first daughter. So I had a oldest sister who was born in 1981.
Okay.
And after that, I total have 5 different siblings.
Okay.
So I'm the 4th child and 3rd daughter, and I had 2 younger brothers. And since I can remember, I had my maternal grandmother who lived with me, and I had a father, mother, and 2 younger brothers and 2 older sisters. And somehow I had 1 older brother, but he passed away when he was 6 years old by accident. He was playing in the river, but he was drowned, and my mom and dad, they found out his body at midnight. So it was very unfortunate. After he died, my father tried to have a son, and life wasn't that bad back then. Before I was born, my family was okay. They had food, and their life was not too bad. So they were looking for a different child. So I was born because my mom thought I was boy, but yeah, it happened to be a daughter. So that's how she continued to give a birth until she found the 2 boys. But after I was born, our family life was difficult. I think that was started from since 1994. North Korea had a great famine, so all citizens and North Koreans, they were starving and hungry, and like 2.5 million people died by starvation. So that's what I faced my childhood. So After I was born, my two younger brothers born too, but since 1996, my family started to suffer and hunger constantly every day. And since I can remember, I think we drank cold water every day. And I remember for 10 days, we did not have any food to eat. So we only drank cold water. And our siblings and my maternal grandmother, we had to walk to the river right next to our house. That's about 100 feet.
Okay.
But we still have to carry little buckets and then go there and walk to the house with the bucket of water. We did that for 9 days, but on the 10th day, we didn't have any strength. So we kind of stopped and we didn't have any hope. And my father and my mother, they went to city to look for food, but that was more than 10 days. We didn't have any transportation, so they have to walk to the city and walk to the countryside. So walking to the city takes 3 days. So only go and back takes like 6 days, and they needed to find a way to earn money or find a food. It will take a month or 2 months until we see my parents. So our life was very difficult. However, we tried to find many ways to survive in North Korea, but whatever my parents tried to do, it didn't work out. So yeah, ended up all my family passed away in North Korea, except my mother and my older sister.
So you said you were the fourth of 5 siblings?
Total 6.
Total of 6?
Yeah, total of 6.
And only you, your mother, and your sister survived?
Yes.
So you mentioned that your father was an orphan. Was he born in North Korea or was he born somewhere else?
Well, when my father was alive, I was too little and we didn't have a chance to talk about all those family tree and family history. But I remember my mother told me after we came to America, she told me my father's, which is my grandparents, they lived in China for a moment, and then my father was born in China side. And then when he was 7 or 11 years old, my grandparents took him to North Korea. So, but my grandparents, of course, they are not Chinese citizens. They were Korean citizens. But during Korean War, they went to China, and my father was born there. So my father's siblings, some of the siblings, they still live in China. Okay. So after he went back to North Korea, he grew up there. And during Korean War, my grandmother got injured, and she was hospitalized until my mother got married, my father. And my grandfather, he passed away when my father was really young. Okay. So yeah, that's how he became an orphan.
Okay. So you have spoken about your father making the journey to China.
Yes.
Was that to search for food? Was the whole state of North Korea in complete poverty at that time?
Yes. So when my father tried to come to China illegally, actually he been to China with the passport and he took a legal process many years ago, which is I think near 1993 or 1994. He came to China with a visa, and then he found his siblings and he brought the gift for me. So it was a really great memory I have at that time. But since 1996, my family struggled a lot and we didn't have any food to eat. And of course, we did not have anything to give to government officials and get the legal paperwork. So that's how he decided to cross the river illegally and ask his relatives to help him and give us some food for dying children. So that's how he tried. And first time and second time he succeeded. So he tried on the third time again, but third time was not lucky enough. So he got caught and he get the punishment from North Korean government. So that's not only our family story, but during 1994 to 1998, there were so many people who suffered sometimes I can hear worse than my story as well.
So you said your father was caught in North Korea trying to cross the border into China.
Yes.
So what happened after that?
Well, after that, my father was in prison. He got tortured and he got beaten. And my mom also got detained as well. So about 3 months, we did not know anything about my father and my mother. We don't know where they have been and what happened to them. We have no idea what happened. We just waiting in the house with my grandmother and like looking the road, which covered with the wood branches. We are looking that area like every day, see like today whether they're gonna come or not. Yeah, we are waiting for them. But one day my mom showed up from that road and then she was walking so slow. So we ran to her and we hugged her and trying to find out what happened to her, and then she just collapsed after she got to the house. And then she told us that my father and my mother, they got caught by the officials and they were in prison and they got tortured severely. So my mom actually, she suffered for 2 months after she returned home. She got released because she had the last baby. She was pregnant. So that's how she got released, but not my father. And after she got released, she was 3 months pregnant and then she suffered 2 months. So she was not able to walk or anything. All her legs were swollen because of the torture. And all those kind of difficult time passed. Since my father was not home, only adult was my mom and my grandmother. But grandmother was old and she could not earn money or walk long distance. And my mother was the only breadwinner, but she got injured and she was pregnant. So the only breadwinner was my oldest sister. At the time, I think she was 17 years old. And then she was traveling back and forth to city and trying to find food for us. But of course, 17 years old, young girl, what kind of food she can earn from city. So we suffered a lot since then. And after 8 months, we found out what happened to our father. We got the letter from our government said, well, my father tried to escape from the train to China side. So one of our officials found out that, and then he shot to my father to death. So my mom heard that news. She was shocked. So she delivered the baby in the late night without any lights. So my grandmother and my older sister, both of them helped my mom to deliver the baby at night. And after that, we had a baby, and my oldest sister just returned from city and just found out that the baby was born early. And we didn't have anything to eat except cold water. So she went back to city again, and that took about 7 days, and she never returned. So for my mom, she heard my father passed away. She had a new baby, and her oldest daughter never returned home. So she was so worried, and after 7 days later, she decided to search for my older sister. And then she left home, and it took 2 months. Because she searched the whole city and whole villages and couldn't find her. And after 2 months later, we found out she also went to China side to see whether my older sister went to our relative house or not. But she didn't have news either. And when after she returned back to home, of course, one of the older sister and my grandmother, we all tried to help newborn baby to keep survive and to keep living, but that didn't work out. So before my mom returned, about 3 days ago, baby passed away. So my grandmother, she buried him a little far distant from the house. And after my mom returned with Chinese milk powder and all those baby food, but she found out baby is not in the house anymore. So she was crying and so sad, and she kind of complained to our government, like, how come this government make us this miserable, and why our life is like this difficult. And then she was crying, but someone just overheard near our house. So she reported to the officials again. And then the officials came to our house and grabbed my mom. And they just took everything what my mother brought from China.
So one of your neighbors reported
Yes.
that your mother was crying.
Yeah, while my mom was crying and complaining, she heard it. And then, like village people, they know my mom was away for 2 months. Like she was disappeared, and then she showed up, and then she was crying in the house. So she felt suspicious. And then she reported to the officials to say, well, I think that lady went to China again. So that's why officials came, like 5 or 6 people came to our house, and they were searching a whole house, trying to find whether is there anything else that they can take with them.
So they confiscated everything she had brought with her.
Yes. So yeah, they took everything from our house.
Is that when your mother decided that it was time for you and her to try to make the journey again?
Actually, that's not the final moment. Even though our life was hard, even though the government killed my father, even though we are starving every day, my mom actually didn't decide to leave our country. We tried our best to survive in our country, but after she went to prison, she got bitten and she was bleeding, and she ran to our house and trying to hide a few days. But all those difficulties, we kind of endure it. But when my grandmother passed away, that was June 1997, no, actually 1998, June, my grandmother passed away. And her last wish was to eat 1 baked potato, but we could not provide that to her because we didn't have anything. And after we lost our grandmother, for my mom, it's like for one young woman, she lost her mother, her child, and her oldest daughter, and her husband at like same year. So many things happened in a short time. So for her, it was so difficult to bear all those pain in her heart. And when she looked through the house, like a little 2 daughters, and actually one of my younger brother was survived at that moment too. So 3 of us were looking at her, and she decided, oh my God, this is not the country I can live anymore. If I live in this country one day more, then 1 more kids will die. So that's how I think she decided to leave the country. Even though she has little kids, she wanted to try to help the remaining kids to survive.
Right.
Yeah. So
even though it was such a dangerous journey,
she took
felt that it was necessary.
Risk. Yeah.
So what was that journey like to cross the river into China, knowing that it was just so perilous and that, people get caught and get sent back and get put into prison? What was it like making that journey?
Well, I can't really think about like, if someone asks me, do I want to go back? Then I don't think I can make it through. But I think my mom, she was really brave and she was really smart lady. So each time we came back to China, she gave us order like what should do. And each time we got caught, she told me and my sister what to say. And without all those management and organized way, of course, my family already died or sent to political prison camp in North Korea. So I want to give all the credit to my mom for this whole journey. 10 years in China, 1 woman with the 2 young girls, it's not easy because anytime she will separate with her daughter, and like a small little girls can be sold to anywhere in China. It was very dangerous, but miraculously we all got meet each other again, even though we separated for a year or 2. A lot of neighbors, Korean Chinese citizens, they are like good people around me, so they all protected. And I think since I was 9 years old, the Christian community involved in my life. and I got protected by those pastors and young pastors. So I kind of avoided the route of human trafficking rings, so I was really saved. But not all the North Korean girls, they are lucky like me. So, yeah.
So once you were in China, did you feel a sense of relief, or did you still feel that you were in a lot of danger?
Well, so the big difference I can tell is when we live in North Korea, we had no idea about life, and we were only worried about hungry and what we should eat. But once we came to China, we have a food and we have clothes to wear, but always like scared and like worry about the officers, and we have to hide, and we have to run place to place and protect our identity and lie to other citizens that, oh, we are not came from North Korea, but we came from South Korea. Of course, we don't look like South Korean, and we don't speak South Korean language, so we have to like learn how to be South Korean, even though we never been to South Korea.
Right.
And we also have to learn Chinese like Chinese citizens. So we have to speak Chinese when we go out to supermarket or groceries, we have to speak Chinese. So for living, we forced to learn Chinese culture and Chinese language as well. So mostly we feel like fear, not safe. If we walk through the malls or shopping centers, or even though we take a taxi or bus, we still have to watch surroundings and really careful and be alerted.
So you were always vigilant.
Yeah.
And always. Yeah. What would have happened if an official found out that you were from North Korea? Would they send you back?
Yeah, so the first step is they will come to us and ask us some questions and hear and like what's our name and where we live and who taking care of us. And if they feel like, oh, it's really suspicious, then they will ask us to prove our identity, but we cannot prove that. So once someone come to us and try to talk to us, then that means it's too late. So we have to avoid that moment. So we never want to speak with other strangers in the street or something like that.
So did you feel isolated, that you couldn't really connect with people, or that you had to stay, really close to your family and not let anyone know who else you were?
Yeah, I think we kind of isolated ourselves from the communities when we live in China, because involving with the community is part of exposed to community that we came from North Korea and we are in danger. So my mom tried to protect our identity very strong and very really family only style, because we were not able to play with other kids from the village, and we never allowed to go out even though it's daytime. And even though some of the friends who tried to ask us to go out and play, and she never allowed us to go out. So
it was too risky.
Yeah, everything was risky for her, and she doesn't want to lose all those remaining two daughters as well. So yeah, protecting it was the first priority.
Right. You mentioned that you had to assimilate to Chinese culture and learn the language, and that you had to pretend to be South Korean. So what was that like? You said you had never been to South Korea, and the language, even though it's the same language, it's a little bit different, I assume. So what was that like for you?
Well, first of all, I can say it was very challenging. It was very difficult, and I was like 12 or 13 years old, but I have to act like a 16 or 17 years old girl, because if I am 12 or 13, I'm supposed to go to middle school or high school, but I cannot go back to school, so I have to act like I'm older. I finished the school, so I don't have to go, So I kind of lived like acting life when I was little. So that's how I didn't like to talk with the people, and I didn't like to involve in communities. I think that's what my personality, like introverted personality, built it from there, I think.
Right.
So yeah, it was very challenging because we watched dramas or Korean movies to learn their accents, their acts, and their culture a little bit. But of course, that's not enough.
Right.
So the first like stranger came to us, oh, where do you come from? Then, oh, we will say, oh, we came from South Korea. And do you have any ID? Then I will say, oh, we put in the hotel or we put in the luggage and we didn't bring it. So then that's the first thing we can avoid from the second stage of question from the strangers.
Okay.
So that's how we try to avoid. When our Chinese language improved, just like a Chinese citizen, we said, well, we came from that area, we moved here, we are kind of new.
Okay.
So like we're trying to find then like new topics and new reason to avoid all those dangerous moments.
Wow, that must have been hard to keep up with.
Yes.
All the changes. And so tell me about when you met the pastor who helped you to have a chance to come here to the United States.
Yeah, the pastor John Yoon, he visited, if I go back a little bit, I was 9 years old, and then two Korean Chinese pastors who found us when we live in Chinese countryside. They visited us. They drove to our house actually for 2 hours. And then he convinced me and my sister, said, well, they are Christian pastors and they have a house and they're willing to feed us and give us clothes and help us to study at their house. And then we think, oh, that's a great opportunity, and let's join them. So we decided to join their house, their family, and I stayed there for 2 years. And these two pastors actually were taking care of North Korean orphans. So sometimes we lived about 6 or 7 different North Korean kids at the same house for several months, and like come and goes. So later on, I found out he was running a underground Bible church school like
in
that.
China.
In China,
okay,
like taking care of orphans. It is illegal, but he tried to hide our presence in the apartment, and he ordered us when he left in the morning for work, like we should not be loud and we should not run around in the house. We have to act like nobody in the house. So we have to walk like, like pointing toe and then walk around in the house, very quiet. And we only act like only 1 or 2 kids in the house in the evening time. So like everybody was silent.
Wow.
So we lived like that for 2 years. And during 2 years, there's many missionary trips. Missionaries from America, from South Korea, they visited us. I think one of the pastor was Pastor Yoon. He visited us back in 2001 in that house. And 2004, we were so lucky. We met him again in different pastor's house after a few years later. And then we both recognized, oh my God, you were like Grace, and I recognized him. And since then, he helped our family for 1 year. And in 2005, my family tried to help him while he was rescuing other defectors to South Korea. Since my sister and I were able to speak Chinese, we tried to help him out, but we all got caught in the mission. So we served we stayed in the Chinese prison for 13 months, and he finished his final trial, and he sent back to America, and my family sent back to North Korea.
So after living in China for so many years, you were caught, and the pastor was sent back here, and you had to go back to North Korea.
Yes, so during 10 years in China, actually my family got caught 4 times and sent it back 4 times. And I'm the luckiest one in the family. I only sent it back 2 times. So back in 2005, that was my second time I got caught and stayed in the prison and sent back to North Korea. So our citizenship was in North Korea, so Chinese government, they never recognized us as legal refugees, so they always sent us back to our original country.
So when you were sent back, you were immediately sent into prison?
Yes.
And you were there for 13 months?
Well, I stayed in Chinese side prison for 13 months because my family had to wait until the Pastor Yun's final sentence.
Okay.
If he gets many years prison sentence, then he will go to Chinese prison and we will go back to North Korea. But he got like only 13 months sentence, so he finished and he came back to America and we sent him back to North Korea.
So then how did you escape from North Korea once again?
Yeah, so from that time, actually my family kind of gave up our hope. Say, well, we met Korean American missionary, ourselves were Christian, and we also helped other North Koreans to defect China to South Korea. And we also become a broker. So one of them is very serious crime in North Korea. If we committed one of them, we are considered as political prison camp case. But we committed all 4 of them. So it's very serious and it's a whole family involved. So if we go back to North Korean policy and regulation, we probably an example to become a public executed group. So we kind of like, oh my God, we will have no hope to survive this time. And we kind of gave up, but Pastor Yun, after he came back to America, he asked the politicians and human rights groups and church members and his friends and neighbors and collected about $10,000 back in 2005 and 2006. And then he bribed Chinese pastors and brokers and trying to expand his connections into North Korea. And he bribed 6 high officials from North Korean government. And then he gave that money and rescued my family. So
wow.
So it was really a miracle.
So he raised money to bribe the North Korean officials.
Yes.
And the money worked.
Yes.
And you were able to enter the United States?
After that, of course, crossed the Chumon River again to China. It was the first step. And after we crossed the border, we got protected by pastors. And we later found out all those 6 high officials got in trouble and they all got caught in North Korea. So we are not safe anymore because North Korean government were looking for us and sent some agent into Yanbian area. So we got a call and said, well, we have to run. So we drove to Beijing after 2 months later. So that's December 30th. And we ran to Beijing, China, but we didn't know where to go. But before 2 months ago, we actually wrote our family story and sent it to Pastor Yun. And then he sent that letter to UN, I think. And then he did some work in here. And 2 months later, we called him again and told him the urgency. And then he said, well, let me see what we can do. And then he called us several phone calls and he said, well, the Beijing office, UN office, willing to accept us. So once we get into Beijing, we got protected by the UN officials. So we were safe from that. And then we wait until our status to become legal refugee from UN. That took, I think, about 15 months in Beijing. And after that, we got the permission and we flew from China to UN, United States directly.
So that must have been a huge relief to have that protection.
Yes. Well, UN was the only savior for us at the moment. So
So you entered the United States. Where did you fly into?
It was Seattle, Washington. It was a beautiful state. It was my first time I saw actual tree actually has a beautiful flowers on. Like in North Korea or in China, only tree flowers we can see is I don't know how to call it, but it's called jindalle. It's a pink flower during spring season only.
The cherry blossom.
Yeah, I think it's a cherry blossom. So I thought there's not other flowers actually. You
didn't know other flowers existed.
Yeah, but Seattle, after we came to Seattle, it was so beautiful, but rains a lot. And of course, it was a little depressing. And my mom and my sister, their physical condition was not really good with the rain. So we decided to move out of state. So we kind of traveled different states like Alaska and Maryland, Virginia, and different states for like another 9 years. In 9 years, yeah.
So for 9 years, you were, just moving around and trying to find a place to settle.
Yeah.
So what brought you here to Maryland?
Well, actually, from Alaska, we moved to Maryland, Beltsville, and I attended High Point High School for 1 year during my 10th grade. And after that, we moved to Virginia, and we lived for 6 years in Virginia. But resettlement in Virginia was really challenging and hard as well.
Okay.
So my family decided to move to Georgia and about 2 years ago. And I just finished high school in Virginia and tried to apply to college. And actually, I started it with Nova, and I attended for 2 semesters there, but I found another friend who offers house in Maryland. And of course, the house and rent is the big deal as a college student, so I moved to Maryland. And the commute from Maryland to Nova was really far and hard, so I decided to move to Montgomery College, and I love here, so yeah.
We're very grateful to have you here as a student. So thinking about like everything that you've gone through and all of the trials and tribulations and losing your family members, I'm curious to know how you feel about some of the people who defect from North Korea but then end up going back. I've read some cases of defectors who either just can't quite assimilate and the culture shock is just too much for them to bear after they defect to South Korea. And there have been cases of other defectors who've been promised, houses and money if they return, which, is probably not true. But what do you think about the people who are just not able to assimilate and then end up returning to a place that, as you know, is such an oppressive regime?
I should say North Koreans, when they decide to leave their country, back in 1990s or before 2005, I can say many people, they decide to go to South Korea because they are in danger, or they are looking for food, or they lost their family members or whole family like that. So they go to South Korea was only way for them to survive. But since after 2005, there are many people, they're just curious and they want to explore the South Korean regime and this society. So some people, they are not starving and they are not suffering in North Korea, but they want to go and see what they look like.
Just to
because
experience.
they were exposed through DVDs and USBs, and they were watching Korean pop songs and dramas. So it was like really amazing experience for them. So they just came to South Korea, and some of them, their life was really good in North Korea because they were considered as elites. But when they come to North Korea, they have to start from the bottom. So culture shock, of course, is very challenging, and South Korean society, everything is like competitive, and everything they have to earn, and like they have to beat everybody to success. So it was really difficult. And also and then they realize, oh my God, what have I done? And my family is still in North Korea, and if the regime found out I'm here, my family is in danger. And all those kind of consequences will come up together, and then end up, oh my God, I don't want to put my family in danger. I want to go back and like live normal. So that's how they decide to go back, I believe. But not many of them, they did. So far, I believe there's only 9 people returned to North Korea. And like 2 or 3 people, they willing to go North Korea, so that's why they claimed it, but of course they will regret for their whole life. But some of them, they are abducted by the North Korean regime by propaganda purposes. And recently, I think there's one lady who was doing the South Korean TV program in South Korea, but now she's doing North Korean TV program in North Korea.
Oh, wow.
So she completely changed. She cut all her hair out and she dyed her hair back to black from yellow, and her whole life was changed. And then she was saying that, well, she got treated really badly in South Korea, and South Korean didn't treat her well, and all those kind of propaganda words. But of course, that's trained by North Korean government. It's not her true words.
Right.
So all these things we can see. There's 27,000 North Korean defectors are currently living in South Korea as a part of South Korean citizen. And there's only 9 people went to North Korea.
Returned.
So it's, with the portion, it's really small. But
right.
Of course, we will question about, well, if many people say our regime is bad, why you want to go back? But there's some consequences and some issues at the back.
Right. Do you feel like for those 27,000 who moved to South Korea that they have kind of a lot of the same challenges of assimilating and finding jobs and, trying to make a life for themselves in South Korea?
Yes. Well, for seniors and adults, they're kind of gave up and they trying to adapt to new society and live quietly. For young people who was born in after 1987 or 85, I think they are trying very hard to adapt to new society, and they want a success and they want to become leaders. So at least about 10 students I have met, they are completing South Korean universities and also do internships in America, and they found a great job in South Korea and trying to pursue their goals in life. So they do become great leaders in South Korea, and I heard a lot of success stories from South Korea as well. But of course, there's a lot of cultural challenges they have to face, and a lot of sad stories happening in South Korea too. But of course, like whoever came from other countries, that's the challenges we have to face.
It's always a struggle.
Yeah.
So in addition to your studying here at Montgomery College, you are also involved in a nonprofit that's called North Korean Refugees in the United States.
Yes.
So can you tell me about your work for
yes, actually my sister Jinhae, she started that organization with a different defector family who lives in Virginia. So after we came to America in 2008, we suffered a lot, of course, like adapting new language, adapting new society, new culture. It was really challenging. And of course, a lot of mistakes we also made, like, for example, like missed due date or didn't understand what was that bill was asking for, so we didn't pay the bill.
Right.
So it became like a double fine and all those kind of small mistakes. So we did it like for many years. And through all those small mistakes, we decided like, oh my God, we should share this kind of challenges to other defectors, since there's only 200 people in America as refugees. So we should share our information and we can help each other. So that was the original purpose. And we started small, but without the proper organization set up, many people, they kind of, how can I say, they kind of cannot trust individual if they donate this money, where those money goes. There's no clarification. So Jinhae and other defectors said, well, let's set up an organization and we can do big work and we can help more people. So that's how they built organization in 2011. And one American lawyer whose name was Thomas Barker, he helped them and set up all those nonprofit organization paperwork and 501c3 and all those kind of legal process. So, and then in 2012, we became official organization based in DC. And after that, we focus on raise awareness, which is my sister and I. We travel places and tell the North Korean stories and the stories what happening in North Korea. We're trying to help people to understand the reality and raise awareness about those lack of humanities. And the second is we're trying to rescue more North Korean defectors from China to South Korea or to United States. My family got survived and we got freedom here, and I don't think that's done. And I think we survived, and we have mission that needed to rescue more people from China who are suffering right now. So that's why most of our donation goes to the rescue mission. And for 9 years, we also saw many people that are suffering while they are settling in the United States. So we're trying to help them a little bit. So we added resettlement program as well. So we are focusing 3 subjects.
It's amazing that you're working to build awareness. North Korea has been in the news a lot lately.
Yes.
And it's great to hear the story from someone who has lived through the experiences and, suffered so many tragedies. We're very thankful to have you here. And I think your story is inspiring, and just your courage is just amazing to hear. And thank you again for chatting with me and sharing your story. It was really nice to catch up with you.
Well, thank you very much. Without you and without friends around us to support our organization, we cannot do anything like this meaningful work and tasks. So please keep encouraging us and be involved with us.
Thank you,
very
Grace.
much.
감사합니다.
감사합니다.